As Louisiana State University continues with the series March for Survival, more of the civil defense story unfolds. As you view these films, we wish briefly to discuss what you are about to see. This next program concerns the effects of nuclear weapons, to date, the most devastating implement of destruction devised by man. Frightening, unprecedented, but not necessarily ultimate. We ask that as you view this film, you keep certain things in mind. First, this is a film designed to show you the magnitude and power of such weapons. You will become more aware of their varied effects. You will also learn the limitations that even such awesome devices as these do have. Tremendous damage and loss of life would occur by their use. Damage and loss would vary depending on such factors as the size of the weapons, the number used, where they struck, weather, terrain, and several others. What is significant is that even under severe attack, much of the nation would remain. There would be a base on which to rebuild. Even such weapons as these cannot destroy everything. You will notice that in the hypothetical attack shown, a heavy one, only about 5% of the nation is actually hit. Bad? Certainly. The end of the nation? No. Not if we know what could happen and what we could do. This film is not a laboratory study for the technician. Indeed, the technical aspects are kept to a minimum and generalizations are used. For the student of weapons effects, more sophisticated references and courses are available. What you will see is a vivid description of the power of these weapons and the magnitude of an imaginary nuclear attack on one county and its cities. You will recognize, however, that even under such an attack, a prepared nation would survive. Or perhaps it is Capital City, the site of the state capital. Or maybe you live in Lake City, the largest city in the state and famous for its huge industrial complex. Now at precisely 10:29 a.m., two of the enemy's missiles strike Central County. One at Capital City. 20 miles away from downtown Lake City, the other explodes. Central City, 50 miles away from Capital City, 73 miles from Lake City, is undamaged by either bomb. Although the missile aimed at Lake City misses by about 20 miles, with a blinding flash, it explodes high above Rainy National Park. About 3 miles and turns the vast forest into a sea of uncontrollable flame. Within seconds, the searing heat of the great thermal wave sets fire to the suburb, spends most of its fury on the great industrial complex, crosses the river, and speeds on past the center of the city. With only 15 minutes warning, surprise attack leaves little time for all those in office buildings to reach their shelters. Okay, don't worry about it. Is George Brown up there? We got the fire control off that floor, George. Yeah, sure. Hey, John, and I reckon what's the talk to you on the yellow paper. Okay. Okay, cool. Shelter 2A, Travis speaking. Over.
Travis, we've got our first reports in, and this is the situation. The bomb missed by 15 or 20 miles. They say the whole West Bank is on fire. We've got no report yet on blast damage. We don't know about fallout yet. We're waiting to hear from Capital City. Watch your readings, but it looks like you've got at least a half hour to pick up extra food or anything else you might need. Did you have any injuries? Over.
Not many. Nothing we can't handle. Nothing else to report. 2-8, over and out.
Well, I have 4 people to pick up. I've gotten 3 of them in the car. As I was putting that last one in, things all hell break loose.
Where can I take my little girl?
That fireball was right over there. That fireball was right on top of me. I thought, well, I put them all over.
All of a sudden, there was this crash and this light, and the wind just disappeared.
Okay, all right.
But the people of Capital City are not so fortunate. This missile, carrying a 5 megaton warhead, strikes in the very center of the helpless city. The flash of light produced, brighter than the sun, lasts about 1 minute. The thermal wave, which spreads from the huge fireball, blankens the city, extending as far as 15 miles into the surrounding areas. The tremendous impact of the blast digs a deep crater a half-mile wide, destroying virtually everything within 1 mile of ground zero. Within 2 miles, most of the city's buildings are destroyed. The point on the Earth's surface, directly beneath the center of a nuclear explosion, is called ground zero, sometimes abbreviated GZ. Of the surrounding land objects, surface features would make the patterns irregular. Now, if a weapon is detonated high enough above the surface, no crater is formed, and the blast effects near ground zero are somewhat reduced. The areas of thermal effects and blast damage to light structures, however, are materially increased. A large portion of the energy in the detonation of a nuclear weapon is given off as thermal radiation. Let's use this model to show the enormity of the destructive force of this 5 megaton blast to better understand what happens in a city struck by a nuclear blast. Now let's imagine the bomb strikes in the center of town. Ground zero, within that 5-block radius, for 1/4 mile north, east, south, and west. Complete destruction. A huge gaping crater 1/2 mile across. Now 40, 60 blocks, 3 miles out of ground zero. Most of the buildings are totally destroyed by blast. 5 miles from ground zero, blast damage is still severe, and fire becomes an additional major threat. Between 5 and 7 miles away from ground zero, blast is still a significant and fearful hazard, and fire still a major threat to homes and buildings. 7, 8, even 10 miles from downtown, most houses remain intact. But now additional fires started by the shock wave that followed the blast. Fires caused by ruptured gas lines and short-circuited wires within houses and buildings present a serious and difficult control problem. Not until we reach beyond 10 miles will houses be relatively safe. In every direction from the detonation, 10 miles, 200 city blocks of devastation. Such is the mighty power of the atom, of a nuclear explosion. But despite the destruction, many people are alive. While few shelters remain near the immediate blast area in capital city, a few miles from the actual blast areas, shelters do provide additional protection from direct exposure to the tremendous heat, flying debris, and broken glass caused by the bomb. Now, people in these shelters survive the first minute of the attack on capital city. But the city is virtually destroyed, and casualties are heavy. Now, since Lake City is spared a direct hit, it escapes the full fury of the blast from its bomb. Casualties in Lake City were few. Central City, beyond the reach of both bombs, is totally undamaged by blast or fire. Now, this may be easier to understand if you know more about the vast difference between the blast and fire effects of conventional weapons and those of nuclear weapons. Although both conventional and nuclear weapons are blast weapons, nuclear weapons differ from conventional weapons in 4 important aspects. First, a quick burst of intense heat emerges from the fireball. Now, this searing heat is called thermal radiation. Second, within the first minute following detonation, lethal initial nuclear radiation covers the immediate blast area. Third, the nuclear reaction products which remain after the explosion are radioactive, and through radioactive fallout can kill unprotected people hundreds of miles from the blast area. Fourth, nuclear explosions can be many thousands or millions of times more powerful than the largest conventional detonations. The atomic bombs which were dropped on Japan in 1945 were roughly equal in explosive force to the power of 20,000 times the blockbusters dropped on German and Japanese cities in World War II. These early or baby atomic bombs were dwarfed by the unbelievably powerful nuclear weapons of today. While the first A-bombs measured in kilotons, or thousands of tons of TNT equivalent. The thermonuclear weapons used in the attack on Central County were measured in megatons, or millions of tons of TNT. All the bombing raids on Germany in World War II by all the Allied forces together totaled but 1 megaton. If 100 planes a day, each carrying one blockbuster, delivered 1,000 tons or 1 kiloton over a target, it would take them 55 years to deliver the explosive power of one 20 megaton nuclear weapon carried by one plane and dropped on one target. But in this attack, more than 250 missiles were launched in an effort to destroy 144 major targets. All in all, the enemy struck 122 targets in this single attack and unleashed hundreds of millions of tons of explosive power. More power than ever released in all the combined wars fought by man. Despite direct hits on 122 targets, over 95% of the nation is untouched, and more than half our population has survived the immediate effects. But what about these people who have survived? Like the people of Central City. Of the 3 major cities in Central County, only Central City escapes the blast and heat effects of nuclear explosions. These people are now threatened by a silent killer which has begun to spread out across our nation. Radioactive fallout. Radioactive fallout which can cause a slow, lingering death. But although fallout presents the greatest threat to the largest number of people, it is the easiest to defend against. The people of Central City, the people of the entire nation, have 3 definite allies: distance, time, and shielding. Fallout must travel the distance from capital city to Central City. This takes time and gives the people of Central City an opportunity to take preventive measures and to go to adequate shelter. Community shelters provide protection when the fallout arrives by shielding these people from the deadly radiation levels outside. Time will become their ally again, for radiation levels decay with time, and if they stay in shelter while these levels are too high, they will survive. When the alarms first sounded in Central City, Bill Schuster and every other shelter manager immediately opened their shelters. Within 15 minutes, most of these shelters were filled to their maximum capacity. But not everybody made it to shelter. Thousands of suburban housewives, like Mrs. Appleton and her elderly mother, were caught bewildered in their homes. Their cars were downtown with their husbands. Without transportation and without any personal survival plans, where could they go? What could they do? People like Bill Foley, whose suburban real estate development offered fine homes, but no shelters. Or Doc Summers, whose drugstore at Twin Corners provided the latest antibiotics and cosmetics, but provides little protection from radiation. A few, like George and Ruth Hamilton, had the foresight to build home shelters and have adequate survival plans. Fortunately for Ruth, her 2 sons were at home recovering from spring colds. And when the warning sounded, they knew what to do. But what about George? Would he be all right? No time to think of that now. George knew what to do. There was a shelter in his office building. No need to panic over that. But to Henry Porter, caught on the highway between Capital City and Central City, there was but one thing to do: race to shelter.
conscious Porter that he had had time on his side. Time, the precious ally against radiation. Time to activate the plan so many people scoffed at before the attack. Here in the Central City EOC, the Emergency Operating Center, the time is now H+1, 1 hour after the missiles had struck. Dave Connors, Central City Civil Defense Director, was talking to Chris Middleton, the State Civil Defense Director in Capital City.
So you see, Dave, most of my men didn't get here at all. Capital City's a shambles. Governor Coleman is here, and he wants Central City to take over the operation and control functions of the state EOC until we are relocated. Can you take over?
We'll do our best, Chris. How much time do we have before your fallout reaches us?
The last reading we got showed a wind speed of about 25 miles an hour. That should give you an hour before it hits you.
Well, I'll give us a little more time and we'll get some of the people from the suburbs. Then we'll be able to take over the state EOC control function. Can you hold off that long?
I guess we'll have to. Good luck. Call us when you're ready.
Okay, Chris. Central City clear.
Dave Connors, father of 3, not even sure of the location of his own family, but is Central City's Civil Defense Director, suddenly responsible for the entire state's emergency operations and its 3,250,000 people.
Start moving the people from the suburbs. Jack, tell the emergency broadcast system to switch over to announcement number 3. And Joe, tell the shelter managers that we're going to activate phase 4. Give them half an hour and get an additional supply.
And so the people of Central County have faced the first hours of a massive nuclear attack. Capital City is helpless, with fires raging through its streets, and its few survivors forced into shelter by deadly radiation. Lake City, still untouched by fallout, is already fighting to save the city and its industrial complex. Central City is pinned down by fallout for no one knows how long, but the city is undamaged and the people wait for fallout. The time is now H+2, 2 hours after the missiles had struck. Fallout is settling on Central City. By the time Henry Porter regains consciousness and finally reaches Central City, he has been overtaken by the fallout, exposed to a lethal dose of radiation. As Porter reaches a sanctuary in the state troopers building fallout shelter, it is too late. He is a doomed man. What is there in this familiar street that can reach out and kill?